Hello and welcome to the channel. If this is your first time, welcome. If not, welcome back, my friend. Okay, so let's jump right in and start building this Tensegrity table. Later on, I'll share with you what my challenges were, but I think it's a very easy project, simple project to do, and anyone can do this. You'll just need to mix in some faith with the work you're putting and a little bit of patience also. So to begin this project, I started off by making sure that all four sides of the board are flat, and I'm using a planer for this one, but as you can see on the right, you can accomplish it using a table saw by just cutting off the rounded edges. And then I took it off to the table saw to cut a square. So the dimensions of the square that you end up with will be based off how much material you took off when you cut off the rounded edges or planed down the board. In my case, the new thickness is 1 3/8, and so that's what I'm grouping the boards based off to get a square. To keep this build very simple, I'm going with just two simple measurements. The longer pieces will be 10 inches long and the shorter pieces will be 5 3/4 inches long. I've seen other build of this where there are 3 different sizes used, but I thought I'll go with just 2 measurements to keep it simple. At this point, I want to quickly remind you that all you need is a little bit of faith and some action. And then on the miter saw, I'll do the final cuts at 10 inches long for the longer pieces and 5 3/4 inches long for the shorter pieces. I'm guessing you may have already thought about this, that you can actually use a 2x2 board for this instead of the 2x4. So if you have 2x2s available or you have access to those, you can just use 2x2 boards for this. So here are all the pieces that we need for this build. 6 at 10 inches long and 4 at 5 3/4 inches long. And next we'll move on to assembly. As usual, I'm using Titebond Quick and Thick. That's the glue I use in almost all of my projects. It dries fast, it dries clear, and it is very strong bond. And then I also used 2.5 inches of cabinet screws to attach each sides of the boards that are butting up against each other. I'm guessing you could use mitered edges, but this is just fine using the butted edges, the butted corners, the butted joints. Again, we want to keep this build as easy as possible. Later on, I did go back and use a Forstner bit to make sure all the screws are recessed, and then I used a dowel to cover up the holes and make sure they were all flushed. You'll see that later on. And I did that after the glue had dried off on all sides. Now with all the assembly done, I did a good sanding of all sides of it. It might be a good idea to sand all of the pieces before assembly, but I'm still able to sand all parts of it. Where I thought it would be easier with just a piece of sandpaper, I just grabbed a small piece and hand sanded it. So if you think it would be easier for you, you might want to sand off all the pieces before assembly. Next, I'm finding the center of the board. So based off the current width of the square, I'm finding the center of the board, and then I'll mark that and then use that same distance from the end of the board to get the spot where I'll mark to fasten an eye bolt. And then I'll repeat that same process on all 6 of the different spots where the eye hooks or eye bolts will be attached to. Next, I just pre-drilled where the eye bolts will be attached. Now it's time for the most fun part or interesting part of this project, which is to get the top and bottom pieces to balance using the strings that are attached. So this part of the build is what I thought was very challenging until I realized that I was doing it the flip side, and I almost gave up on it and left the project. But then I flip it over, and that's when I discovered, oh, this is how it should work. And I'm going to try to explain it the best way I can. However, from the video, it should make more sense, and I'll put a text description of it on the screen as well, and hope that should help. I really wanted to see how easy this was to do, and like I said, I realized that I needed to flip it over, and that is how it should work. So the ends of the arms should be at the top, and those should be attached to the corners, which serve as the base to support the strings that are attached. I hope this view makes sense of what I'm talking about. Yeah, at this point now I was pretty satisfied, and so I just tensioned the strings to get it to balance so that it's and then the only thing left to do now was to just make sure that it's actually, the top of it is actually level, which again has to do with the correct tension of the strings, mostly the ones on the outer ends. As you can see there, it is not level. But once I was able to adjust the tension of the outer strings, I was able to get it to be level, as you will see shortly. So this is one of the advantages of using the eye hooks, because you can increase or reduce the tension by just loosening or tightening. By tightening or loosening the eye hooks. And here it is after some adjustment to make sure that it is leveled. On the left hand side is where you'll see you can see that it's now leveled. On the right hand side, I was just testing to see what's the best way to lift it up. Obviously, you'll have to use the base of it to lift it up, not the tops. And now I'm just using 1/2-inch dowels to make plugs to cover the screw holes. And that's it for this project. I hope you enjoy this one and it inspires you to give it a try. Until next time, I hope you'll have a tangible experience of God's love today. Take care and God bless you, my friend. If you like this video and would like to see some other easy build videos, check out the playlist showing up on your screen right now.